Okay, so this is for Electronic Layout, fall of 2016, and we are doing a book cover design, and we're going to lay out in InDesign the page for this. Now this will be a 6x9 book with a 1-inch spine, and we're going to go ahead and turn off facing pages in this instance because we're going to use one continuous spread, and we're going to kind of divide these up ourselves. So turn off facing pages for starts. For the inside of the book, that'd be great to leave that on, but we're working on the exterior. And for the width of the book, we want to take each of these sides is 6 inches wide plus the 1-inch spine. So we take 6 inches plus 6 inches for each cover plus 1 inch for the spine. What's that number going to be? 6 plus 6 plus 1. 13. Now you'll notice I won't type in just 13 here because we're in picas. So type in 13 and then IN, and it will convert to picas, which happens to be 78 picas. Our height is 9 inches, so you can simply type in 9IN on that one. Okay. And it looks, since he has a 1/4 of an inch all the way around this, we'll go ahead and we'll leave column at 1 because we're going to separate this ourselves. And we are going to type in for our margins 0.25 IN. Okay? And then make sure, if you hit the tab key, it will get them all to stick, assuming that this little chain link thing is not broken. So that will keep everything together. Now, if we want to know where the bleed is, which most of you guys will probably have bleeded graphics off the edge, we will click on the little triangle next to bleed and slug, and our bleed is 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125 IN. Now, I also know that 0.125 IN translates to 0 picas 9 points. So we want to put 0 P9 there, and we want to make sure that all of the bleed areas have 0 P9. So your top, bottom, left, and right. And again, if we click on that link, or if the link is connected, it should automatically stick. Now you can hit preview, and it will show you what this is going to look like in the beginning. The pinkish purple line is the margin. That's still printable area past that area. Anything that's white is printable area. The red is also printable area, but we'll trim that off. That's where we pull graphics that bleed to the edge of a page. So bleeds are things that go right to the edge of a page, and you go a little bit beyond. So I know in the video you won't be able to see this, but I'm holding up this document here, and this cover that's designed has elements going off the page. Well, we have to make those go 1/4 of an inch off the page so that when this is trimmed out, you don't get a little white sliver there. You know, if it's right on the edge and they cut slightly off, you get a little white sliver. So the bleed is kind of a little safety mechanism so that when you cut something out, if you're slightly off, it won't matter. It'll be fine. So again, in preview, we have a 78 picas by 54 picas. That's what the mathematics equated to. We have margins at 1/4 of an inch, which is 1 P6, 1 pica 6 points, and our bleed is 1/8 of an inch, which is P9. So I'm going to hit OK because that's what we need. Now we're going to pull in some guides so that we can know where the spine is, where we need to stop and start our cover design, that kind of stuff. Now, if you'd like, I will be more comfortable at this particular moment to work in inches, not picas, because the measurement is 6 inches by 9 inches, and those are pretty whole numbers and easy to work with. So on your rulers in InDesign, you'll see there's a ruler on the left and a ruler up top. You want to right-click on either the top or the left one, but we'll have to do both of them, actually. You right-click on one of those, and you choose inches, and it doesn't automatically convert the other one to inches, so you have to do this on both the horizontal and the vertical ruler. Right-click and tell it inches. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize, that if you click on one, they assume the other changes. I believe in Photoshop it does, and even in Illustrator it does, but in InDesign you have to tell it, both of them, to change. Okay, so we're going to pull in a guide to the 6-inch mark. So we're going to go out to the ruler, and you can be on almost any tool, but I'm going to go ahead and choose the selection tool. That's the black arrow. And I'm going to click in this vertical ruler, the one that goes up and down, and my cursor turns into a double cursor. And I'm going to drag that roughly to 6 inches. Guys, don't worry about being perfect. Just get it close, okay? Don't worry about being perfect because we can tell this what to do later. Again, I'm going to hit Command Z, and we went from the ruler out on the far left, and we drug in a guide to about the 6-inch mark. Now, what we can do is, as long as this 6-inch mark is selected, this guide, you can, up in the upper, let's say I'm slightly off of 6 inches. I'm not, but I'm going to make it. If I'm slightly off on this 6 inches, I'm going to click on this guide, and I can see in the x-axis that it's at 5.98 inches. All you have to do is triple click in there. It'll highlight the whole thing. Put a 6 in there and hit the tab key, and it will move that guide exactly to 6 inches. This is why I was telling you guys don't worry about being accurate when you drag it, because we can tell it to go right to 6 inches. Now we're going to pull another guide up to the 7-inch mark. Notice that when you do that, if you did want to be accurate and it's snapping pretty well to that mark, that while you're dragging, it shows in the x-axis, there's a little box right next to where you're dragging, and it'll show you whether you're on 7 inches or not. So that's a great way too, where you don't have to go and type in a number. So we now have our 1-inch spine. What's that?
It's just you shift to.
Shift to do what?
As you're dragging to get to a.
To make sure that it goes right to the 1/4 inch or 9 inch or whatever. Yes, you can. So the question was, why not just use shift while you're dragging? Because shift will force it every 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch, and it will you won't have those odd little measurements. So that's even quicker. Thank you for asking, and thank you for telling about that little secret. It's not really a secret, but a lot of people don't know it. Okay, so that is the actual fold. Now, what I typically will do here, I'm going to zoom in to the upper section of the spine. I'm actually using the zoom tool, and I'm drawing a square around the part that I want to zoom into, so it'll zoom right into that. I don't have to click, 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 click to zoom in. That clicking and zooming takes forever. So if you're in the habit of clicking and zooming, you're wasting your precious life. So just click, drag, and zoom into the place that you need to get. Now we're actually going to create some dotted lines outside of the printed area, so that way when you guys are ready to critique this, you will print it and you'll have a place to fold it, because we do see covers of books mainly folded, so you only see the front, the back, and the spine is different planes. We don't normally see them flat out like they come out of the printer. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the line tool, which is, it's just a tool, looks like a little line. Grab that guy, and we're going to draw. I tend to go down here towards the guide I created, just so I'm accurate. And I am going to draw a line, holding down the shift key so it stays straight up and down, a line that kind of matches up with that guide of that first segment of that inch. So this would actually be at 6-inch mark. And I'm going to copy it, and I hold down Alt when I do this. When you hold down Alt, or on a Mac, it's also Option key, Alt or Option, and it's next to the Command key or Control key. But if you hold down Alt and you start dragging, this is copy and paste. And if you hold down the Shift key after you start dragging it, it keeps it in line, and you can put that one over there at the 7-inch mark. Now, if that does not perfectly go to the 7-inch mark, you can, now I don't know when I hold down Shift, in this case, it doesn't perfectly go over there because it's not a guide. So you might want to type in the x-axis that it is going to 7 inches if it didn't go there. Also double check your other guide, make sure he's at 6 inches. Now typically crop marks and fold marks and things like that are 1/2 of a point. These currently are 1 point default stroke widths, and you could go to the strokes panel, but it's also up here on the control panel. You'll see a little line, and you'll see a 1 PT above it. Make sure these are selected, so drag across them and select them, and then put in a 0.5 there. And again, now this is kind of a crummy thing because it doesn't measure these off center or on the center mark. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, it is not on the 6-inch mark anymore. That is kind of silly. So I'm going to have to make sure these are still on the 6-inch and 7-inch mark. I know that seems like I'm being particular, but when it comes to packaging design and stuff like that, it is really particular. About mathematics, measurements are super particular. Now, in addition to making those half of a point, we also want those to be dashed or dotted lines, okay? Dashed or dotted lines means fold. Sure, I'm going rather quickly, yes?
I missed the, how did you make them half a point?
Okay, to make these half of a point, make sure they're selected. And then up in your control panel, you'll see a solid line up here. And then above that, you'll see a 1 PT. Sorry, it's right in here. And you want to drop down that menu and choose the 0.5, okay? I'm sorry, I do go a little fast, but you can slow me down. It doesn't bother me one bit. I get paid the same either way. Actually, I'm not getting paid for tonight, but that's okay. I'll act like I am. All right, and then underneath that, instead of a solid line, you'll want a dashed or dotted line. Okay, it really doesn't matter which one. Yes, Brenna?
The stuff up top.
That's your control panel.
How do we go to window and then how do I open that up?
Well, are your lines selected first off?
Yes.
Okay, this is gone is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. So when you go to window, there's a control. It's about 7 items down. And if it's not checked, that means it's gone. So go to window control, and it will pop back up. Okay? Thank you for asking. And then, so we'll let Brenna get caught up to getting her lines a half a point and dotted, because she was like, I don't know where I'm going here. And then we'll move these up so that they align to the red line, okay? So you don't want them going right to the edge of the page. You want them to go up to the red line a little bit. And hold down the shift key when you do that so it stays perfectly where they need to be.
Did you change the size at all, or did you just make the whole
They were half a point.
No,
The length of them?
Yeah.
The length of them, usually they're a half an inch, but in this case it's not going to be that big of a deal. We'll just leave them at whatever length they are, okay? Now, I suppose I'm thinking about when we're actually printing, and I'm going to try to avoid having to set our bleed wider. So I'm going to retract just a moment. Instead of going just above the red line, go halfway between the red line and the edge of the page. This will save us from having to set the bleed even wider. Normally they're an 1/8 inch away, but for today we're going to put it a little closer, just to make sure we have one of those little tick marks in there so we know where to draw our score lines. Score the page, in other words. Okay? Now what you want to do after you have these is, oh my gosh, save the document. We haven't saved it yet. We've worked so hard on it, and wouldn't it just be horrible if we had an electrical outage problem? So let's go ahead and save this. And I would call it, what is this, your project number 2? What is this? Project 1. But before project 1, let's put your name. Okay, so for me, I'm Rebecca Bilbrey. And that way, when you package these and give them to your professor, they know exactly who it belongs to. Now be careful, because this will automatically save it into documents. So you probably want to take this to your flash drive. Oh, I got a Brent flash drive. I'm not Brent, but I would take it to my flash drive. I plugged that in to see who it belonged to, actually. So technically, for me, I'm going to go to the desktop because I don't want to save to Brent's flash drive. But normally we'd save to a flash drive. I'm going to save that. Now, I am going to, after saving this, I'm going to copy those lines, those dotted lines for the folds. I'm going to copy those, and I'm going to put them down below as well. So you might want to zoom out, which is Command and the number 0, not the letter O. And you can move those down there. If you could drag them down holding the Shift key, or if you know they're going to be moved down 9 or 10 inches, you could go to Transform, Move, and tell it to move horizontally. Wait, no, not horizontally. That's vertically. 10 inches. And preview it and see if it gets down that way. Oh, it'd be -10. Sorry, because it's going down. Oh, it's saying it's going to leave the pasteboard. Okay. Well, it doesn't like that at all. I think it's because my crops are, or my lines. Okay, well, forget that. Let's just drag them down. It's arguing with me. So we've selected them. Hold down the Alt key and the Shift key at the same time and drag them down just below the bottom of the page. Okay, I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see where they're at. And anytime you move them, hold down the Shift key so they don't, you want them to stay in line with those marks. Okay? And I always save. I hit Command S pretty frequently because I've lost too many documents when I was a younger designer, and I learned to hit Command S a lot. Okay, now we're ready to do a couple of more guides. We need to pull in a guide that helps us understand that we need to be 1/4 of an inch away from the spine on our back cover. So you want to go to your guide and pull it 1/4 of an inch to the left of the spine, okay? It'll be at 5.75. And as Aaron stated, if you hold down the Shift key while you're pulling that guide, that is very handy because it will automatically find the 1/4s and the 1/8ths and the halves pretty quickly. So you want one at the 5.75, and you also want one at the 7.25. It helps us understand that's as far as we need to take graphics if we don't want them to go rolling on the fold of the spine. I went off to the left ruler and I pulled a guide to 5 3/4, which is 5.75, and I pulled another one, a second one, to 7.25. 2 more guides. Is that pretty clear for you? Okay. Okay, now we need to pull a couple of more guides because the spine, we can't have type on the spine go right to the fold, okay? So we want to also pull in some guides, and these will be 1/8 of an inch in from the spine edge. So it'll be 1/8 of an inch in from the left-hand side, so we're going to the right of the fold, 1/8 of an inch. So this will be 6.125. Okay, we don't want any type going past that. And then we'll also want one 1/8 of an inch from the right side of that fold, which is 6.875. Again, if you're holding down your Shift key while you're pulling your guides down, it'll get you to those a lot easier because it snaps right to them. So we have 2 little guides inside that 1 inch area. So if I zoom in, you'll actually be able to see the dotted lines, follow the fold lines, and then these guides are, they're little safety margins so we don't put type to the edges of the fold. And you can make those guides a different color if you'd like, so that you know that that is not the fold. Okay, so let me show you how to do that. So let's say we wanted the fold guides to be more of a pink color like the rest of these margins, or maybe we want them to be black actually. You know, the fold might be black. So if you want to, and these are non-printable, so no matter what color we make them, it really doesn't matter. It's just more for us to get our minds around what's going on. So click on the 6-inch guide and hold down your Shift key and click on the 7-inch guide. Have those selected. Then right-click on that guide, and where it says ruler guides, we want to choose that. And instead of cyan, you make those black and hit OK, and it becomes much more clear to you what these are for. Okay, we don't want to be confused about what's the spine fold versus what is a safety margin. Makes sense, doesn't it? Because I can tell you, when you have all blue guides and you're working, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to back out of this thing so I know which is my fold and which is my safety margin. And we don't want to waste your time like that. So colorize these folded guidelines to black, and it'll solve all that problem. And we should save. Okay. Now let's assume
What were the outside guides for?
these right. Let me zoom these right here.
No, outside the spine. Outside the fold lines.
Oh, it's because if I put I'm just going to type some type in here. If I were to put type up to this point, it's not going to be right on the fold. So that helps me kind of keep my type from being consumed by the edge. If I were to drag it over to the fold, when it folds, it's going to be really close to that edge, and unless I meant to design it that way, because sometimes we do, that's okay. But like if it's the author's name and that's right on that fold, it's going to look real funny having that. It'll feel like it's right at the edge of the page, very claustrophobic. So it gives us a little safety margin from the edge of the book, okay? The folded edge of the book. That's what that's for. And it's similar to the the same could be said for the guides that are on the outer edges. If we want the author's name to go right to the edge of this guide, it will look better than. So I'm going to hit the W key for just a second. That looks better than having the author's name right there. So that's what those guides are for. It's for certain typographic elements, smaller typographic elements oftentimes, where we don't want them writing on the edge of the page. Now, if I was getting really funky with type and I had, this really large word, oops, excuse me, I can't seem to type large today. It's not taking my E. There we go. The E on the keyboard wasn't working. But if I had a very, very large word and I wanted to bleed off the edges, that might not be as big of a deal because it's not small type. So if I hit the W key, this would go right off the edge. Maybe it's a little too large. But it can bleed off and people can still read it. And sometimes people aren't quite as unsettled by large type bleeding off the edges. Okay? So we can do larger type and elements going off the edge. Images oftentimes go off the edge. But small type typically does not. So that helps keep us in check as far as margins for the smaller type.
So what were the inside margins on the spine?
This inside margin, oh, these right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, if I were to typeset something, let me say large, and let me rotate this, because normally we would rotate this. And do you guys know which rotation we do? Does it read up or down on a spine? Let's talk about that real quick while I'm thinking about it. Up or down? Down. And why? Good question, right? Because when a book is laying cover up, so if I have this on the table and the cover's face up, is that reading upside down or right side up on the spine? That's right side up, isn't it? So when you're designing, you're reading down on the spine. So you're right you go down. But the reason why is because when it's on the table and the cover's up, you can still see this and it's right reading. Does this make sense? Okay. So we want it to read down. And let me show you here. I'm going to put a couple color blocks in here too so you can see. Here is what we have for the margin. Now let's say this is my type that's the title of the book. My book is called Large. And I'm going to pretend for a moment that I have a color on my front page. Maybe I have a solid color here. And I'm also going to put a solid color on the back so we can definitely see why we do this, okay? So this is, let's say I have yellow on the front and the back, but I don't have yellow on the spine. I'm going to hit the W key. W is what you see is what you get, by the way. Assuming you're not in a type box. If you're in a type box, it'll type a W. But this is what you get when you print. W, okay? Now, this is nice because when this is folded, there's the fold line right there. You got your 1-inch spine. When that's folded, this is not riding the edge, is it? It's quite nicely padded. Okay, I'm going to hit the W key. See, it's fairly aligned to this, to those lines. So it's basically padding. And if I were to go right to the edge and ignore those lines, what I would have is a little bit of a problem in that, whoops, hello. Let me bring it to the front so we can get it to, we'll see it all. And if I were to do this, let's say that big, when this is folded, if this book were folded, that top of the L and all these letters would be right on the fold. Sometimes it slightly bends over the fold, but you'll even notice on your Graphic Design Solutions book, do you guys have the red one or the black one? The red one. Even they have a little room above the title and below the title. So those little blue lines are the room for above and below the title, because right now I'm not using them, and right now I've ignored them, and it's going right to the edge of the fold, and that will create some problems. It's too tight. We like a little padding around our typography.
So is it just the top of the letters that have to line up with that?
Yeah, the top of the letters perhaps, yeah. You don't, and sometimes they can be smaller than that too. Like I might decide that my headline is not that big, and if that's the case, you just kind of want to center it optically between those lines. So in this case, I have not used the guidelines to align the type. My type is smaller than my actual guides, but optically it's centered between them. Okay, so it doesn't have to line perfectly to those guides. It just has to be as wide or as tall as or smaller. Okay, so right now it's smaller, and before I had it larger. So you can have it as big as the guides. Oops, that's too big. I mean, unless you're designing something where you're purposely trying to make it feel claustrophobic, which sometimes we do that. But I can have it as large as the guides or as wide as the guides or smaller. Does that make sense? So this size or smaller. Oh my goodness, what was that? Excuse me, I'm going to do a little arrangement there so that doesn't happen again. Okay. So this is normally how we'd set it up in the industry as far as getting this document going. And then we'll print to 11 by 17 with crop marks on, and it'll automatically put the crops on, and it all will be good. Now I'm going to delete the word large, and I'm going to delete my color blocks because I don't need them. I was just putting them in for example. And I'm going to save that. Now what you guys will want to do is, assuming you have already done your designs, which we're due today, you will open that file, and unfortunately I don't have a book cover, I'd open it, and you will copy and paste from your document perhaps to this one and adjust things for this document. Does this make sense? And then we'll print from this document, okay? Do you guys need a few minutes to copy and paste and get that handled before we print? Okay, why don't I give you about a few minutes, and I'll walk around, see how you're doing. And I'll stop the video. I got to do that. Let me stop this video, otherwise it'll be a million miles long.